The sound of her crying shook me awake. It wasn't a soft cry. It was the kind that made your heart squeeze in your chest. I rushed to my window, looking across the yard to the small house where my neighbor lived. The door was open and I could see her sitting on the ground, her head in her hands, shaking. My husband woke up beside me, frowning. "What's going on?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. "It's her again," I whispered. "Adora." Adora had been crying like this for days now, ever since her husband, Ekene, lost his job. Everyone in the village knew Ekene had been a proud man, always boasting about how he could provide for his family. Now, with no money, things had changed. But something told me it wasn't just the job. There was something more, something big, and it was breaking Adora apart. I threw on my wrapper and hurried out the door. The moon was bright, casting a soft light over the village. I crossed the short path to her home and knelt beside her. "Adora, what's wrong?" I asked, though I already knew the answer wasn't simple. She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. "He left me," she whispered. "What do you mean?" I asked, shocked. "Ekene, he left me and the kids." When she said those words, "He left me," my heart dropped. I knew things were bad, but I didn't think it had gotten to this point. I sat down beside her, and the night felt colder than before. Her children were asleep inside, unaware of what was happening. "How could he just leave?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Adora shook her head. "I don't know. He hasn't been the same since he lost his job. Every day he do come back home angry, shouting about how useless he felt. I tried to help. I tried to remind him that we're in this together, but it's like he wasn't hearing me anymore." I listened as she spoke, my chest tightening with each word. She wiped her face with the edge of her wrapper, her hands shaking. "Today he came. He came and packed his things. He didn't even say goodbye to the kids, just walked out the door." My throat felt tight. I didn't know what to say. Ekene had always been the strong one, the man everyone in the village admired. To see him crumble like this, it didn't make sense. "What will you do now?" I finally asked. "I don't know," she replied, her voice shaky. "I have to be strong for the children, but how? I feel so broken." By morning, everyone in the village knew. News traveled fast here, especially when it's something like this. The market was buzzing with people talking about how Ekene left Adora and the kids. Some were shocked, others nodded like they had seen it coming. "She should have known better than to depend on a man," I heard a woman say as I passed by. It was easy for people to judge when they weren't the one living through it. When I went to visit Adora later that day, she looked exhausted. Her eyes were swelling from crying and her voice was weak. But she was trying to keep it together for her children. Little Kosi was playing with sticks outside, unaware of the storm going on around him. His sister Amara held on to Adora's wrapper, watching her mother with worried eyes. "They are scared," Adora whispered to me when the children weren't listening. They keep asking where the papa went, but I don't know what to tell them. It broke my heart to see her like this. I wanted to help, but I didn't know how. What do you say to a woman whose life just fell apart? Days passed and Adaora was barely hanging on. But then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. There was a knock at her door. It was Shifokeke, one of the elders of the village. He had heard about what happened and came to offer his support. "You are not alone in this, Adaora," he said gently. "We are a community and we help each other." His words brought a flash of hope to Adaora's tired eyes. She nodded, her voice quiet as she thanked him. He offered her some food and promised to speak to other elders about finding a way to help her family. It was the first time I saw Adaora smile since Ekene left. With the help of Shifokeke and a few other kind villagers, Adaora started to find her strength again. Slowly, little by little, things were getting better. The food helped, and the support of the community reminded her that she wasn't alone. One afternoon, I heard laughter from Adaora's house. It was a sound I hadn't heard in a long time, and it made me smile. I rushed over to see what was happening. When I arrived, I saw Kamsi and Amara playing in the yard, chasing each other around with big smiles on their faces. Adaora was standing nearby watching them with tears in her eyes, but this time they weren't tears of sadness. "They are happy," she said softly when she saw me. "I haven't seen them laugh like this since Ekene left." I smiled, feeling warmth spread in my chest. The children's laughter was like music, filling the air with a sense of hope. Maybe things weren't perfect, but there was still joy to be found even in the hardest moments. Weeks had passed since Ekene left, and life in the village had slowly started to go back to normal. Adaora was doing her best to stay strong for her children. She didn't talk much about Ekene anymore, but you could still see the sadness in her eyes. One evening, just as the sun was beginning to set, there was a knock on her door. Adaora, expecting a neighbor, opened it, only to find Ekene standing there. He looked different, thinner, tired, with his head hanging low. His once proud stance was gone, replaced by a man who seemed broken. "Adaora," he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. Adaora stood frozen, her hand grabbing the edge of the door. I was there, visiting her, and I could feel the tension in the air. Neither of them spoke for what felt like forever. Then Adaora finally asked, "Why?" Ekene looked down, unable to meet her eyes. "I was ashamed," he admitted. "I failed you. I failed the kids. I didn't know how to face you after losing everything." Tears welled up in Adaora's eyes, but she didn't let it fall. "You didn't have to leave. We could have figured it out together. We are family." Ekene's voice cracked as he spoke. "I didn't know how to be strong for you anymore. I thought walking away was the answer." Adaora stepped back, allowing Ekene to enter the house. But the air was thick with unresolved feelings. He sat down, holding his head in his hands, while Adaora stood across the room, arms crossed. "I have been thinking," Adaora said after a long silence, "about everything. about what it means to be a husband, to be a wife. It's not about who has the most money or who can provide the most. It's about standing by each other, even when things fall apart. Ekene looked up, tears forming in his eyes. I know, I made a mistake. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I came back because I want to fix it. I want to be the husband you deserve. There was a long pause. Adora's face was unreadable. Then she sighed, her shoulders dropping. It's not that easy, Ekene. You left us. You left the kids. The kids cried for days. I cried for days. How can I trust you won't do it again? Ekene stood up, his hands shaking. I will do whatever it takes to prove to you that I'm not that man anymore. I just need a chance. The news of Ekene's return spread quickly through the village. Some were happy for Adora, while others thought she would be a fool to take him back. Men like that don't change, one of the market women told me. He left once, he will leave again. But I knew Adora's heart, and I knew that deep down she still loved him. She just didn't know if love was enough to mend the wound he left behind. One evening I went to visit Adora. We sat outside watching the children play. Ekene was inside trying to fix a broken chair, though I could tell he was still nervous around Adora. What are you going to do? I asked her softly. She sighed, staring at the sunset. I don't know. Part of me wants to give him another chance, but another part of me is scared. What if he breaks my heart again? I nodded, understanding her fear. You are the only one who can decide that, I said gently. But whatever you choose, you have to think about what's best for you and the kids. Few days later, Ekene approached Adora with a quiet determination. I have spoken to Shifokeke, he said. He's going to help me find work again. I know it's not much, but it's a start. Adora watched him carefully, unsure if this was just another empty promise. But for the sake of her children, and maybe a part of her heart, she decided to give him a chance. I'm not ready to trust you completely, she said, her voice firm. But I'm willing to see if you have really changed. Ekene nodded, his face showing both relief and fear. Thank you, Adora. I won't let you down. With the help of the village elders, Ekene found work again. It wasn't as grand as his old job, but it was an honest job and it gave him a sense of purpose. Slowly, he started to rebuild his life and his family. At first, Adora kept her distance. She was still guided, watching him closely to see if he would keep his word. But over time, as Ekene showed up for the kids, helped around the house, and worked hard, something in Adora began to soften. One evening, as they sat together on the front porch, Adora looked at Ekene and said, I see you are trying, Ekene. I see it. Ekene turned to her, his eyes filled with hope. I want to be the man you married, the man you can rely on. Adora smiled faintly, her heart slowly starting to heal. You are not there yet, she said, her voice gentle but firm, but you are getting closer. Trust is fragile like thin glass. Once it breaks, even if you try to put the pieces back together, the cracks remain. That's what it felt like between Adora and Ekene. The children were happy to have their father back. laughing and playing like they didn't have a care in the world. But Adaora, the road to trusting Ekene again was long and filled with uncertainty. Ekene did his best. Every day he woke up early, helped with the children, and went to work. He came home tired but always tried to make time for his family. He was different now, quieter, more thoughtful, but Adaora still kept her guard up. She didn't want to get hurt again. One evening, after the children were asleep, Ekene sat down beside Adaora. "I know I hurt you," he said softly. "I don't expect you to forget that. But I'm trying, Adaora. I'm trying to be the man you can lean on." Adaora sighed, feeling the weight of his words. "I know, Ekene. I see you are trying, but it's hard. Every time I start to trust you again, I remember how you left, and it scares me." Ekene reached out, gently taking her hand. "I won't leave again. I swear it. I will spend the rest of my life proving it to you." Adaora didn't pull her hand away this time. Maybe it wasn't enough yet, but it was a start. The village was buzzing with excitement for the annual Festival of Unity. It was a time when everyone came together to celebrate the strength of the community. There was food, dancing, and storytelling around the fire, reminding us all that no matter how hard life got, we could learn on each other. Adaora and Ekene were invited, of course. It was the first time since Ekene returned that they would be out in public together as a family. Adaora was nervous. She knew the village was watching, waiting to see if she would forgive him completely. Some people whispered that she was foolish for taking him back, while others thought she was brave. As they walked through the festival hand in hand with their children, the eyes of the village were on them, but Adaora held her head high. She wasn't ashamed of her decision. She was doing what was best for her family. "Are you okay?" Ekene whispered to her, sensing her discomfort. Adaora nodded. "I will be okay." For the first time in a long time, she actually believed it.